You've had this conversation before. You pulled them aside, you told them what needed to change. They nodded, said they got it, and then 2 weeks later, you're watching them do the exact same thing again. And now you're standing there trying to figure out if you're the problem or they are. This is the feedback loop that doesn't close, and it's one of the most demoralizing situations you'll ever face as a manager because you feel like you're doing everything right and nothing is changing. In this video, I'm going to show you a 4-step framework that breaks that cycle. It's called the reset loop. And if you've ever given someone the same feedback more than once, this is the video you needed yesterday. Drop a loop in the comments right now if this sounds familiar. Here's what most managers get wrong, and I want to say this clearly. Most managers confuse repeating feedback with giving better feedback. You said it once, they didn't change, so you said it again with more detail, more emphasis, maybe a little bit more frustration in your voice, and still nothing changed. The problem is not they didn't hear you. The problem is that the feedback you're giving is aimed at the behavior, not the breakdown. There's a difference. Telling someone you need to be more accurate on these reports is feedback about behavior, but it doesn't tell you or them why it keeps happening. Is it a skill gap? Are they missing something they don't know they're missing? Is it a priority gap? They don't actually believe it matters as much as you do? Or is it a will gap? They understand the standard, but they're choosing not to meet it. If you don't know which one it is, you're guessing. And when you guess, you give generic feedback, and generic feedback produces no change. Here's what happens if you let this run. One of two things. Either the employee eventually wears you down and the standard quietly lowers because you stop fighting the same battle every week, or resentment builds on both sides and the relationship breaks down to the point where you're managing them out. Neither outcome is good for your team, your reputation, or your next performance review. There's a better path. And it starts with something the military taught me before I ever stepped into a civilian office. If you're finding value in this, subscribe. I put out practical leadership content every week for managers who got promoted without a roadmap. It's free, and the stuff we cover here is exactly what no one teaches you before they hand you a team. All right, let's get into it. In the military, we had a principle called standard before correction. Before you corrected anyone, you had to be able to point to the exact standard they failed to meet. Not your preference, not what you've seen done before, the actual written, communicated, agreed upon standard. If you couldn't point to it, the correction was invalid. And more importantly, if they didn't know it, the failure wasn't theirs, it was on me. That reframing hit a lot of NCOs hard the first time they heard it, because it means the feedback loop problem isn't just about the employee repeating the mistake, it's about whether the standard was ever truly set, whether the right root cause was ever diagnosed, and whether the accountability structure was ever built to make change unavoidable. That's what the reset loop does. And quick, if you want the full Frontline Command field guide with every framework I use in this channel, the link will be in the description. It's free. Step 1, restate the standard, not the infraction. Before you say a word about what went wrong, you need to anchor the conversation in what right looks like. The NCO principle here, you cannot correct to a standard that was never clearly established. Most managers skip this step because they assume the standard is obvious. It rarely is. What it looks like in practice, you open the conversation not with, you did this wrong again, but with, let me make sure we're aligned what we're looking for. You name the standard specifically, not better quality, not more attention to detail. You say, by Friday at noon, these reports need to be submitted with 0 calculation errors and fully reconciled to the source data. That's the benchmark. You're not being condescending, you're being precise. There is a difference. The action for the next 30 days, before any repeat feedback conversation, write down the exact standard on paper. If you can't write it in one clear sentence, it's not clear enough to hold someone accountable to. Step 2, expose the gap, skill or will. This is the step most managers skip entirely, and it's the one that changes everything. The NCO principle. In the military, we distinguish between can't and won't. Someone who can't perform needs training. Someone who won't perform needs discipline. Treating them the same way produces the wrong outcome every time. What it looks like in practice. You ask a direct question. Walk me through what happens when you're working on this. Where does it break down? And then you listen. Actually listen. You're looking for one of three things. They don't have the knowledge or skill to meet the standard. They have the skill, but something in the environment or process is getting in the way, or they have the skill and the environment is fine, but they're not prioritizing it. Each of those gets a completely different response from you. A skill gap gets support and training. A process gap gets a system fix. A will gap gets a direct conversation about consequences. If you respond to a skill gap with consequences, you damage trust. If you respond to a will gap with more training, you signal that there are no real stakes. Here's the action. After every repeat feedback conversation, write down your diagnosis, skill, process, or will, and make sure your next move matches. Step 3, set a recovery plan, specific, time-bound, and co-created. This is where accountability stops being a concept and starts being actual structure. Drop a structure in the comments if you've ever tried to hold someone accountable without one, because accountability without structure is just hope with a clipboard. Here's the NCO principle. We didn't just tell people what to fix. We built a counseling plan. We named the deficiency, named the corrective action, set a checkpoint date, and got a signature. Not to punish, to create shared ownership of the outcome. What it looks like in practice. You sit down together and you build the plan out loud. Here's what we've identified. Here's what we're going to do differently. Here's what we're going to do at the check-in. Here's when we're going to check in, and here's what success looks like by that date. You write it down, you both get a copy, not because you're trying to build a paper trail, though that is useful, but because writing it down makes it real. The plan needs 3 things: a specific behavior change, not do better, a checkpoint date within 30 days, and an agreed definition of success. If any of those 3 are missing, the plan isn't a plan. It's a conversation you'll be having again in a few weeks. Here's the action. After this video, build a 1-page template with those 3 fields. Use it every time a feedback conversation goes past the first instance. Step 4, track and acknowledge. Close the loop. This is the step managers forget once the crisis feeling is gone, and it's arguably the most important one. Here's the NCO principle. In the military, we had a principle about recognition. Publicly acknowledge what you want to see repeated. Private correction, public recognition. That combination builds a culture where people trust that doing the right thing actually matters. What it looks like in practice, when your employee starts hitting the standard, even partially, you say something. Not a big production, not great job as you just walk by. You get specific. I noticed the last 3 reports came in clean. That's the standard. That's what we're looking for. That sentence takes 8 seconds to say, and it does more for long-term behavior change than any other correction conversation ever will. And if they're not improving, if the plan was clear, the timeline was fair, and you've done steps 1 through 3 correctly, then you have a will problem. And now you have the documentation and the clarity to address it as one. So here's the action. Set a calendar reminder for your checkpoint date the moment you finish the recovery plan. Don't rely on your memory. The follow-through is what separates managers who get results from managers who get compliant. Let's bring it back. Your employees made the same mistake again. Here's what you do. Step 1, restate the standard. Get precise about what right actually looks like before you say a word about what went wrong. Step 2, expose the gap. Ask them to walk you through the breakdown and diagnose whether you're looking at a skill gap, a process gap, or a will gap. Step 3, set a recovery plan, specific behavior, checkpoint date, agreed definition of success, in writing. Step 4, track and acknowledge. Close the loop when they get it right. And when they don't, with a clear plan and a fair timeline, you have everything you need to move to a different conversation. The moment an employee keeps making the same mistake, they're giving you information. Most managers get frustrated by it. The best ones use it. Now you know what to do. If you want to go deeper on any of these steps, especially how to diagnose skill versus will and how to run the actual recovery conversation, it's all in the free Frontline Command Field Guide. Every framework I use in this channel, structured and ready to use on your team. Link is in the description, free, no string. I'm Kyle Schmidt. This is Frontline Command. I'll see you in the next one.